formerly of 131 Kent Street, and now in LaSalle Village. I am currently president of the Brookline League of Women, formerly as of June. And I want to welcome you all here. I am thrilled there are so many people here to listen to the candidates and to share information. Our mission, I also want to thank our co-sponsors, the Brookline Neighborhood Association, Neighborhood Alliance, often known as the BNA, the Town Meeting Members Association, often known as the TMM, and the Brookline Council on Aging. Okay, can we?
I think they're closed.
Move the lectern is the suggestion.
To where?
We can't do.
Right, but where are we moving it to?
That's fine. You could put it on the other side, for instance, but you're a little attached to the right.
Okay, back to my very brief introduction. We are the League of Women Voters of Brookline, a dedicated group of women and men on a nonpartisan mission to encourage and promote informed and active participation in the civic affairs of Brookline, all parts of the civic affairs of Brookline. Tonight, we're going to be meeting candidates. And one of the most important reasons for getting to know the candidates is that when you go to vote, you do it in an informed way. Now, I'm hoping every single one of you will go out and vote on May 8th, but I'm also hoping that you will encourage all of your neighbors to go out and vote, because this is an important election, and it's important that as many people as possible participate. Brookline has had the ignominious honor of having sometimes 6% turnout, sometimes 13, 16, and sometimes more. But we want to be in the more category this year. So get out and vote and take your neighbors with you. And now I want to introduce Amelia Cock.
No. Yes and no. Hold on one minute.
If you have a seat open next to you, would you please put your hand in the air? And if anybody wants that seat, could you make your way over to those seats? Okay, just wanted to say that.
You have something else you want to say? Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Betsy DeWitt. I'm the Vice President of the Brookline League of Women Voters. And tonight we're very pleased to offer another municipal election forum in a long history of League of Women Voters sponsored events. It is being live streamed and will be recorded by the Brookline Interactive Group. And although I don't know for sure when it will be available, I'm told maybe by Friday of this week the recorded version will be available. Although a discussion of the 2 override ballot questions that will be voted on May 8th is not on the program, we have tried to provide some material with a summary of the operating override, the debt exclusion override, and some information about property tax impacts if the overrides are passed. So I also want you to know that in the room with us tonight are Select Board Chairman Neil Wyszynski, School Committee member Susan Ditkoff, who served on the High School Expansion Planning Committee, and Harold Peterson, who is the Vice Chair of the Board of Assessors and who served on the 2018 Override Study Committee. And those three individuals are in a position to answer questions outside of this forum. You're welcome to talk to them afterwards, but it's not part of the program tonight. And also, I'd just like to let you know that Thursday, April 26th, from 4 to 6 p.m., in the Senior Center, the Brookline Community Aging Network will also host an election forum, and that one will focus on issues affecting seniors. And I also understand that there are a number of neighborhood associations who are convening their own election events over the next 2 weeks. So keep in touch with whoever your local neighborhood association is. And now we will begin. I'm going to just let you know one thing. When we are calling the candidates, they're going to be invited to come up and sit in the seats up there, which are the select board's seats. And the moderator will be standing here and will be in a position to ask questions. The other thing is that we are, I hope, passing out to you 3x5 cards. And if you have a question for a candidate, please take one. And then if you would please at least focus whether it's select board or school committee. It could be a question for either one. It doesn't matter. But if it's particularly for one or the other, mark your question or mark that, just put SB or SC, and I think that'll help us. Okay, and then I have one apology. In the agenda that was distributed, there is a typo, and candidate for school committee Nathan Spritz's name was misspelled, for which I apologize. And now I'm going to turn over the forum to the moderator, Amelia Cott.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the candidate forum. I want to briefly go over the league rules. There are a fairly standard set of rules that the league uses for these kinds of debates. The candidates will make a 1-minute opening statement, order determined by ballot position. The questions will begin with a question prepared by the league. Audience members may write questions on the cards provided and hand them to a league member for passing up to the moderator. And the point of that is to allow the league members to avoid duplicates and to streamline the process of asking questions to the candidates. Candidates will have up to 1 minute each to respond to the question with rotating order among the candidates. And audience questions must be addressed to all candidates. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement in reverse order from the opening statement. And League Cook Child, who is sitting in the front row, will keep track of the time, of all of the times that are followed here. So if you're going to be up here speaking, please keep a weather eye for Lee. She'll give you not only the final bell, but also some measures along the way to let you know how time. Thank you, Lee. Let you know how you're progressing in the amount of time that you have. With that being said, I think we can begin with our first debate, and that will be the select board candidates. There are 4 candidates for 2 seats, and the chairperson earns $4,500 per annum, other members $3,500 per annum. The duties include the select board members carry out the votes of town meeting, review the annual budget for bonds and notes for the borrowing of money, appoint certain department heads, assistants, advisors, boards, and committees, serve as a licensing board and as police and fire commissioners, represent the town before the general court in all regional and metropolitan affairs, and enforce the town bylaws and regulations. The select board candidates should come forward now, and they are candidates for a 3-year term are Bernard W. Green, who's currently an incumbent, Nancy S. Heller, who's also an incumbent, Richard Nengel, who's new, and Donnell S. O'Neill Sr., who's also new. Beginning with the league question. You guys are all seated. So we're going to begin with Bernard W. Green. And the question is, on Sunday... Yes, that's true. Thank you very much. So we will begin with 1-minute introductions, and that would begin with Mr. Green.
Okay. In 2015, I ran for Board of Selectmen, as it was called at that point, promising 4 things. Number 1, that I would be a thoughtful progressive. We're a very progressive liberal town. I think it's important to be thoughtful in that progressiveness. Number 2, I promised that I would address issues related to the police and community. Number 3, I promised that I would address issues of diversity and inclusion. And number 4, I promised that I would address school issues, in particular the override and debt exclusion that was then on the ballot. After 3 years, I think I've met all those, or I've kept all those promises. And during the discussion tonight, the reason why I think that, I think will become clear. In conclusion, I'd like to say that on May 8th, I'm asking for your vote to re-elect me as a member of the Select Board here in Brookline. And I'm told to stop. Thank you.
All right, Nancy Heller.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Heller. I've been on the Select Board with same as Bernard since 2015. I ran because I was so concerned about the schools, but I was also, and the override at that time, but I was also concerned about issues of the environment. And I have, in my time on the Select Board, I have worked on principally, been co-chair of the Select Board's Climate Action Committee, the co-chair of the BHS Expansion Advisory Committee, a representative to the Council on Aging and Senior Citizens, and I'm a firm senior advocate. And I feel that I have had a very good time on the board in the sense of accomplishing things. I think the climate action is one area that we've accomplished a lot with Brookline Green Electricity. The BHS expansion program also. I'm told to stop. Not very much time, but I hope you'll vote for me on May 8th. Thank you.
Richard Nangle.
My name is Richard Nangle. I'm a town meeting member, 22 years, Green Caucus, Brookline Green Space Alliance, a former reporter, Worcester Telegram and Gazette, teaching journalism currently at Emerson College. There's a direct line from the caliber of our parks to the value of our real estate to the quality of our schools. It works in that direction and not the opposite. 3 years ago, in a Brookline Green Space Alliance questionnaire, the incumbents in the election wrote the following: I do not believe that existing parks and other established green spaces should be reduced for non-open space uses. Bernard Green. I will not support efforts to build a new school on parkland like Amory Park. Taking parkland for a school would be a devastating loss of open and recreation space and completely contrary to our goals and objectives. Nancy Heller. I agreed with those answers wholeheartedly. However, once elected, Bernard and Nancy did not follow through on their promises, and over that 3-year period, they voted for school locations at Lars Anderson, Amory Park, Baldwin Playground, and Sewell Park. Not only did they break their campaign promise, but all those sites failed and cost the town money, time, and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nangle.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Neal.
All right, I'm going to stand to address you guys here. This is important. So my name is Donnell O'Neill Sr. I am 38 years old. I've lived in this town my entire life. I have 2 young boys who attend elementary schools like I did.
Pick it up. Just pick it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I currently work for a Spalding Rehab Hospital in nursing in the pulmonary unit. I love my job. I also am my sister's PCA who has cerebral palsy. Politics-wise, I was an elected official. I ran for a town meeting in 2004, and I haven't left here. I've been involved in this town. But the reason why I'm running is for accountability, real accountability. I don't think any of both the incumbents have shown any of that. That's it. I'm going to stop. Let you guys continue on.
Thank you very much. All right, now we'll proceed to the lead question. So, On Sunday, the Boston Globe named Brookline as one of the most desirable and expensive top spots to live in metropolitan Boston. How can the town balance the interests of families with school-age children, its growing population of senior citizens, and the rest of its residents at a time of increasing school enrollment costs, increasing housing costs, and income disparity? Whew, world's problems. So let us start then with you, Mr. Green.
Okay, so the question is, how can we balance all of these
Yes,
issues?
that's correct. And then I'm
I
happy to
think-
reread it for you if you'd like.
Right. It's clear that in Brookline, as throughout this country, you cannot sustain a community of people who are on the low income of the spectrum and people on the high income of the spectrum. We are gutting out the middle class, not just in Brookline, but throughout this country. What's our solution? It's not going to be easy, but we have to begin to develop moderate income housing for, among other people, the people who work for us. That's one of the things that the board is struggling with. The land bank proposal that's on the warrant this year is one way that could be addressed. But it's a problem that there are no simple, easy, magical answers to. It just takes hard work, innovative thinking, and coming up with solutions that over the long run, not tomorrow, but over the medium and long run, we can address this issue, which is both a local issue as well as a national issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. We're going to go on and have Richard Nangle answer this question, and I'm going to reread it for you. On Sunday, the Boston Globe named Brookline as one of the most desirable and expensive top spots to live in metropolitan Boston. How can the town balance the interests of families with school-aged children, its growing population of senior citizens, and the rest of its residents at a time of increasing school enrollment costs, increasing housing costs, and income disparity?
Wouldn't that be typical of the Globe to forget the other side? A median family income with couples and median family income for couples with dependent children is $197,000. The median family income is $144,000. The median income is $96,000. The median non-family income, $52,000. The median income among older women living alone, $32,500. Massachusetts is second only to Mississippi in senior economic insecurity. Not addressing our structural budget deficit has put us on an unsustainable path that is pricing residents and business owners out of our community. This year's ballot questions will raise property taxes 8.7%. It's the largest one-time increase in Brookline history. That pales in comparison to what may come in the next few years. Fiscal outlays must be designed with affordability in mind. About 13% of our residents live in poverty, according to the Brookline Community Foundation, and nearly 30% of our friends and neighbors live in economic insecurity. Wondering how they're going to make ends meet as a select board member, I will make sure our town policies consider affordability for all our residents.
Pardon my conferring. So, Donnell, if you would now answer the same question, Donnell O'Neill Sr., would you like me to read it for you?
No, it's okay.
All right.
We can keep
Very
it
good.
moving. Okay.
You have 1 minute.
So I agree with Richard Nangle in regards to the policies, procedures, in regards to allowing people to stay and live here desirably and comfortably. The Globe's article, I haven't read it, but I feel it touched on a point where it is hard for people to stay here and live, and that's the problem. It's been a problem for years. We do override after override after override after override, and it still hasn't changed anything. So my hope and prayer is this, that our new revenue that no one's speaking about will help out a little bit with the impact on the schools and just help out with the municipalities and infrastructure in the town. And so I'm all done.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Yes, would you like it reread for you?
I think I understand
All
the
right,
question.
very good. Thank you.
I agree with Mr. Green. This is a really tough problem, especially when it comes to families of moderate and low income. And seniors also, although we have somewhat more programs for seniors, we have senior tax deferral, we have the senior work-off program. There are 2 articles coming before town meeting about exemptions at the state level or deferment at the state level. And I believe we need to pass those because we are somewhat hamstrung by the rules and regulations of the Commonwealth about what we can do and what we can't do in granting tax relief to citizens. We have to get permission from the state, and that's not easy to secure. In the meantime, we have increased our stock of affordable housing in the Brookline Housing Authority, as well as we've had a number of affordable housing projects that have been approved, and we're almost at the 10%, so we'll be able to have projects, hopefully, that will provide more affordable units, stay within the zoning rules that we have, and provide relief to families. We do have a senior project that's coming up. I have to stop. I will, but there are things on the horizon
Thank
that
you
are
very
good.
much, yeah. There still are, I think, a couple more seats. Does anybody want a seat? Hands where those seats are? So, and there are 2 in the front row, so if anybody wants a seat, help yourself. Okay, we're going to, there are some questions from the audience. Thank you very much. And Betsy DeWitt is going to read some additional questions for the Select Board candidates.
All right, we have several questions relating to housing development, and having difficulty, we're going to just put forward a question having to do with the number of 40B proposals that have come into the town, and there was some specific reference to a town meeting vote with regard to Hancock Village, which also had a 40B proposal. So the question I'm putting to you, and Mr. Nengel, you are the first, is would you give us your observations and thoughts about the impact of 40Bs and how the town could and should respond to them?
It's really too bad that the law exists, and unfortunately it affects so few communities that there isn't a statewide push to get rid of it. As a reporter with the Worcester Telegram, I tried to interest the paper in writing about this issue, and they weren't really with it because there's really only a few towns that deal with it. I want to talk about Hancock Village specifically because there was an agreement there, and it had some shady language in it, and that was a problem. It had language that allowed for a sale of property. It had language that allowed the property to be turned into a series of LLCs. And so what I did was I worked with some of the Precinct 15 town meeting members, and I threw some votes to Precinct 16 to help them defeat it. I'm not sure that this was the right course of action or not, but I wanted to stand with the people of that community who were very concerned that this was the wrong way to go. I think the 40B issue is difficult, but we've got to do everything that we can to get to the 10% so that we no longer have to deal with these very harmful developments.
Oops. Next. Mr. O'Neill.
So, in regards to affordable housing, I'm from Brookline Village, Village Way. Like it's mixed income housing. Where I live, you see nurses, you see doctors, you see people who work for the DPW. It gives, well, growing up here, it allowed me to see something different, other than how do I explain this? It allowed me to see. Allowed me to be able to reach, you know, to see who I want to be. There's other options out there for me to look at other than the same old housing units. I feel if we had more affordable housing units that people knew or were aware of. So the outreach process of affordable housing could be a little better. That's what I'm trying to say, basically. All right. Thank you. That's it.
Next would be Mr. Green.
Thank you. 40B has been very problematic to Brookline, but we should remember that 40B originally had some good purposes in mind, to bring low-income housing and implicitly integrated housing to suburban communities and ex-urban communities that have a history, in conjunction with state, local, and federal officials and businesses, of segregation, intentional segregation. In Brookline, however, many of our 40B projects have not only brought in affordable housing for many people that we really need, but it's also been a way in which housing costs have been jacked up. We had a housing proposal in Coolidge Corner where there are a number of 40B units in the project, but the rental rates were, in one case, $11,000 plus for a 3-bedroom apartment. Now, what that does is jack up rates throughout the community, making Brookline even more, or making it more, or causing more of the gutting of the middle class by increasing rents to the point where the only people who can afford Brookline are people with very high incomes. That's part of the problem.
And Ms. Heller.
Okay, I'll pick up actually where Mr. Green left off, because that, I remember that proposal well, and he and I were both horrified at the high level of rents. The affordable units, of course, are limited by law, but in most cases, they're only 20% of a development, and so that there's a whole 80% which can be basically luxury units. And that's not what we need here. That's not what we want. We want housing for middle-class families. We want housing that works for more than just the very, very rich. In 2015, along with John Sherman, who's a Precinct 8 town resident, he and I submitted a warrant article criticizing for the 40Bs, and we ended up working with Housing Advisory Board and Roger Blood to turn that into a resolution, which ended up resulting in a housing production plan that ended up resulting in a 1-year stay. Unfortunately, because we are approaching and we met our housing goals under the plan, and but it only gave us a 1-year stay. We're getting to the point where we're going to have 10%, and then we can focus on housing developments that meet more of what we want. We want housing for low-income families. We want housing for low-income seniors. And the best proposals, the ones that we have
Thank you very
most
much.
enthusiastically endorsed, are the ones for 100%.
Thank you very
affordable.
much. Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
thanks.
I have a lot to say on this issue.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. We lost a little track of the time. Okay, so the next question will begin with Mr. O'Neill. And this one is, and I'm going to combine several different ones, but they all have to do with your views and thoughts on addressing the problem of school enrollment and decision-making around having additional classroom space, Ninth Elementary School, or other alternatives. And Mr. O'Neill, you have the floor.
Thank you, Betsy. So, I feel the school enrollment issue is it's been a problem for a while. What's going on? I feel that the capacity study review could be a little bit better. Maybe a little bit. I mean, our education gets 59%, 59.1% of our budget. I mean, it's a lot of money. I feel that we should be managing it a little better. We wouldn't be sitting in this situation we are now. My suggestion is another study for a junior high school. I feel it would open up space amongst the elementary schools. So another study that doesn't cost $50,000, that will take more than 3 studies of a junior high school in 4 years. I think we need to go back at that look for it. Just a junior high school, an elite junior high school, and actually right on where Old Lincoln would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr., let's see, Green. We're rotating around, I'm sorry.
Well, the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that people really love Brookline and want to move in with the kids. The bad news is we don't have space for them. Now, we can expand in place, as some people suggest, meaning expanding into the hallways, onto the stages of our auditoriums, and other less than optimal spaces for kids to learn, especially a 21st century learning environment. The alternative is what we are doing, and that is looking for a site for a 9th school, elementary school, as well as expanding Brookline High School, because we need some place to put the kids who've been coming through the elementary grades and now are at the high school level. It's a very difficult process, as you know. Every site we've looked at, there have been objections, and we are struggling to figure out what is the best location for a 9th school now that we've resolved how to address the expansion of the high school. We have done something that I think will make that process very effective and result in an excellent solution, and that is hiring of Dr. Joseph Connolly to be a coordinator and give us guidance as we find a site for the 9th school that is going to provide an excellent educational opportunity and that Brookline can be very, very proud of.
Thank you. Excuse me, Ms. Heller?
Well, let me address the issue of a junior high school. First of all, if we were to build a junior high school somewhere, we'd still have to build it, and it'd be akin to building a 9th school, because you have to have a school for kids to go to. And so it doesn't really solve our problem. I think that in this town, we've very much valued K-8 education. We've really are very firm about that. Most parents really like it. And why mess with something that's worked so well? The 9th school issue is it's clear that there is no perfect site and there's no perfect solution. And we continue to look. We want to examine every avenue. If people tell us that there's property for sale, please let us know. A big enough site, we'll run over and look at it and see whether we can figure it out. And we have done that. So, you know, we need to keep working at it. Obviously, we have some more property ideas on the table, and we've always brought that out. No decision has been made. I know people have said, well, you've made a decision already. That's absolutely untrue. We have not. Lee is telling me to stop, so I will, but I wanted to make that point.
Mr. Nangle.
There's actually a very good solution. On October 13, 2016, in a joint meeting of the Select Board and the School Committee, the Select Board voted 3-2 for Baker, and the School Committee voted 6-3 for Baldwin. And that meant that Baldwin was chosen by an 8-6 vote. And this was despite a town council memo from several months previous saying that that site would be vulnerable to Article 97 litigation. We've seen Pine Manor College chosen behind closed doors. There's an open meeting law complaint.
That's just not true.
Yeah, it is. Putterham Woods was chosen behind closed doors. There was,
We haven't
Not
chosen
true.
it.
no, it absolutely was. There's been no public
Excuse me,
process
gentlemen,
whatsoever.
no debate amongst yourselves, please.
fake news. We can't.
It's not fake, it's not fake news when Pine Manor College is chosen in a closed executive session meeting and there's no public input into.
Fake news
No,
again.
it sounds like Donald Trump here.
Excuse me. I really appreciate the fact that you're trying to call on him to say something that you think is more correct than what he's saying, but you have your minute.
Amen.
And use your minute
Amen.
to say whatever you want.
Amen.
You don't have to answer the question you're asked. You can answer any question you want. It's your time to use as you please. He's using his time the way he wants,
Amen.
and you must let him speak, plain and simple.
Amen. Good. Amen.
This is what I'm talking about. It's why I'm running. It's not just a lack of transparency, but it's also a lack of accountability. If you want to be on the select board, and you want to have 1/5 of the vote to choose a new school, not 1/14 of the vote to choose a new school. And if I'm elected, I'm going to dissolve that board, or I will at least make a motion to dissolve that board, because it's a completely inappropriate board. It may, in fact, be an illegal board. It certainly seems to be an unprecedented board. There have been a series of listening sessions in recent months in which the school parents of this community have stated a very clear preference for expand in place, and you should hear them out and do what they say.
Thank you. Okay. Excuse me. Let's see. I confess to have lost my place. Let's see. Mr. O'Neill, did you address that one first, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, okay, fine. We'll move on. There is a question that I think you can answer. Well, it's pretty specific, straight question. And therefore, I believe the first speaker on this would be Mr. Green. What is your position on changing the name of the Edward Devotion School?
I think that there's a good justification for addressing this issue, given Mr. Devotion's past, but we have to be very careful. Going down that road would also require that we look at names such as Washington Street, Jefferson Road, and pretty much any building named after someone who was famous enough to have a building named after them. Most of that fame comes from the type of riches and behavior that very few of us would find justified in today's world. But I think that, to the extent that there's a support in the community for changing the name of the school, we should proceed along that line, but with a process that ensures that the use of a process that ensures that how we do it in this instance is able to be used in future instances as we look at other buildings, other facilities where name change may be appropriate. We have to look at this from the standpoint not just of the immediate issue before us, but in terms of a sustainable process that will enable us to handle similar issues as they come up in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Heller.
Well, I think it's, at first blush when I heard about it, I thought, oh my God, my children went to devotion. What are they going to call it now? And, but I realized that, Mr. Devotion had quite a lot of notoriety by having his name on the building for quite a long time. And maybe it's somebody else's turn. But for substantive reasons. And I think that we have a process through a naming committee, and that naming committee is going to look at the issues. I agree with Mr. Green that we may need, in the light of what they come up with, to look at the other places, other places that are streets mostly, but also schools that are named after people who owned slaves. And we have to give it some serious consideration as to what we would do in this situation. Does Mr. Washington get passed because he was our first president, but Mr. Devotion doesn't? So I think these are questions that we need to examine and come up with some answers.
Thank you. Mr. Nangle?
I agree with changing the name, but I don't think the history should be lost, and there ought to be a plaque or something inside that explains why the name was changed, so that, so that it's left for history, and so the kids also can see what the process was and why it was done. That's all I have on that.
Mr. O'Neill?
I obviously want the name changed. I've never called, I'm going to say it today, devotion. For 38 years, I've always called it Devo. Everyone I know has called it Devo. I'm excited about the dialogue this is going to bring up, and it's good education for the town. It's going to give the town a chance to give one back, if you want to say, if you could say it like that, to show that the town is trying to change, and by doing so, we're willing to change the name of Devo. We're working on it as a town to do better, and this dialogue, this process, is going to bring the community closer together. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is an environmental one. There are many identified areas throughout the town, or have been identified areas throughout the town with methane leaks. And there are some places where apparently utility companies are making some corrections, but they don't necessarily all seem to be addressed. Do you have some information to share on this topic, Ms. Heller?
Well, it is a tough problem because National Grid, which is the company that has a monopoly on this issue and needs to come to the town and fix the leaks, had not been willing to do so while we were in litigation over the death of our trees from methane. That litigation has been settled. It was a class action suit. And now, hopefully, they will come and do something about these situations. We do know where some of the leaks are. I've been working with Mothers Out Front about this issue. Every time somebody in the town comes before us about a street opening, I ask about the leaks, because I want to bring attention to the fact that this issue is not being addressed properly. We need to get the leaks fixed, not only because it's a significant health and environmental issue, it's also a cost issue. We pay for the gas that's leaking. National Grid gets a pass on that. So I would hope that we will be able to, Mothers Out Front is working on some strategies to try to get National Grid to do more, and we need to pursue those.
Mr. Nangle?
I've noticed these on Hammond Street where I live, and I'm very concerned about it, and I support the efforts of Mothers Out Front, and I also support what Nancy is doing and the board is doing to push National Grid on this.
Mr. O'Neill?
So I too also agree with Nancy in regards to gas leaks. The reason why I say this is Tuesday night meetings, I think Gina can amen this. She has mentioned to National Grid about the gas leaks and how do we address it. I feel we should address it during our complete street policies. That has to be involved somehow in that language. So there has to be a way when they're doing our complete streets that they somehow, some way fit in the gas leaks also. That would be my suggestion.
And Mr. Green?
Yeah, methane leaks is a very, very important problem, very dangerous problem for this community, as well as our general environment. Select Board Member Heller has really taken the lead on the board on this. Every time National Grid comes before the board, she raises this issue with them. And there's really nothing that I can add to what her answer was to this. Other than to say that the entire board supports her efforts and applaud her for them. I have 30 seconds left. I will offer that to Mr. Nangle
I'm going to send it
in
right back to you.
compensation of our earlier brouhaha.
You can have it back.
Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen. I have one more sort of broad question that is having to do with what is the select board role as being a fire commissioner or a police commissioner? And I believe the first question there goes to Mr. Nangle.
If the select board is going to be the police commissioners, then it should act like police commissioners. And if it's going to be the fire commissioners, it should act like the fire commissioners. And that means making hard decisions. When I was with the Worcester Telegram, there was a time when they put me on the editorial board for a week, which was probably a mistake, but I wrote a editorial about how the police department should be overseen by a civilian review board, and that was because a person had been killed essentially by the police department, and nothing was really being done about it. If the police, if the select board is not going to do this in the correct way, then we ought to have a civilian review.
Okay, moving on. Mr. O'Neill?
Sure. So I feel as a select board member, you don't, first of all, you don't get up and walk out on your firefighters or your police officers. You stand up for them. I know this is not Philadelphia in 1960 or 70 when they had Rizzo they had to deal with, but it feels like your life, jobs, having a job, especially a fire job or a police job, that's stable, that's stability. No one wants to give that up, okay? That's worse than getting a beating every day, to lose your job and not get it back. If I become a select board member, I will make sure I have a stronger handle on the HR department where the grievances start. That's what I would focus on the most. Thank you.
Mr. Green?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to respond to Mr. O'Neill's comment regarding the walkout. We acknowledge that was a mistake. We've apologized for it, and hopefully we've learned from it. So back to the issue of fire and police commissioners. What is a police commissioner? What is a fire commissioner? I mean, we don't have badges. We don't have any enforcement powers. We don't have any supervisory powers over the police or fire department. We have limited powers as so-called police commissioners or fire commissioners. And one of those powers is the power to promulgate policies and procedures of the departments. And that's where I think we've really played a major, major role, particularly in terms of updating the police policies and procedures recently so that they could get reaccredited, as well as to address certain very specific issues regarding 21st century policing, to address some of the concerns that people have in this community as well as other communities regarding the use of force, regarding profiling of particularly black and Hispanic males, and regarding how police respond to people who have mental issues, PTSD, or even kids on the autism or Asperger's spectrum. These are critical issues that we have addressed, and to the benefit of the community in huge ways. And I recommend my op-ed article in the Tab last Thursday for more information on that particular aspect of this problem.
Thank you. Ms. Heller?
Thank you. I agree with much of what Mr. Green has said, and I applaud him for his leadership on the board in the area of developing policies that guide our police in terms of relationships with everyone in the community, with racial diversity, and with people who, and training too. I think that's a large part of it. We also, and he did not mention this, but I will, that we adopted some significant policies around the issue of sanctuary cities and immigrants. We're reluctant to call it sanctuary city because, Mr. Trump is ready to pounce if we do, but But we do want to make sure that our police don't cooperate with ICE raids, for instance, on immigrant families. We want to protect the families who live here, who are law-abiding citizens. Obviously, if they've committed a criminal act, it's a different situation, but for the vast majority have not, and they've been hardworking and valuable members of the community. Our other role, beside developing policies, is to make sure that we have good management of those departments. And we recently hired a fire chief, a man from Worcester who had been the deputy fire chief there and who's got an excellent record. And I'm hopeful that he will bring some important training and decisions to for the fire department. We've just recently lost our police commissioner. I see Leah's giving me the eyeball here. I have to stop. But we also are engaging in a thorough search for that police commissioner.
Thank you very much, and thank you all four. So now we have 1 minute closing arguments, and those are going to be in reverse order from when we began. So we begin with Donal S. O'Neill, Sr.
All right. So, I want positive change. I lived here a very long time. I started voting 20 years ago. 13 years ago, I became a town meeting member. I'm invested in this town, and I don't want to leave this town. At the same token, I want someone in this town that actually represents me and I can relate to. And I feel the current board does not represent that. Please vote for me May 8th. Call me with any questions you have. Send me an email. I promise to get back to you. Thank you.
Next we have Mr. Nangle.
As a union organizer and negotiator, I know the importance of settling contracts for our town employees in a timely way. We've seen contract negotiations drag out several years. That's not only unfair, it's not right. I also want to talk about how in recent days I've knocked on the doors of some of the neighbors of the newly proposed Horace James Circle Elementary School site at Putterham Woods. Some had heard rumors, others had no idea that the town was planning to clear cut a forest near their home and build a new school. I was the first person in any official capacity, if you can call a town meeting member that, who had contacted them. Once again, a decision has been made without public input, a decision that was made in the dark, and I am here to shine the light. I also want to talk about this. While there's wide disagreement on whether Brookline has a race problem, there can be no disagreement that there is a perception that Brookline has a race problem. My goal in 3 years is for the perception of racism in our community to go away. It will only go away if we deal with issues that arise head-on and in real time. I will do that. I will not walk out of the room, nor will I take a vote under my breath. Brookline needs to be better than that. To sum up, right now, large segments of our community are not being represented. If you believe in transparent government, you are not being represented. If you believe in a progressive government that shows compassion for all our citizens, you are not being represented. If you care about preservation of our parks and open spaces and believe they should be protected from development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nangle. Ms. Nancy Heller.
I've been on the board for 3 years now. As I've said to you, I've gotten a lot of satisfaction out of some of the things that have happened. I believe they are important steps forward. I think there are more steps forward that we can take, and I'd like to be a part of that. I completely disagree with Mr. Nangle about the process for the ninth school. We have not made a decision. You haven't seen any clear cutting on Putterham. We've opened the idea to the public, asked for input, are looking at the issues and studying it. That's what we should be doing as a responsible body in terms of our schools. Running out of time. I feel that we need to continue to figure out how we're going to accommodate the surge of enrollment. What we're doing now is not really satisfactory. We're crowding our classes. It's not fair to our students. The BHS expansion that's up for a vote on May 8th is a very important positive step in the right direction. We need to be able to expand the high school to accommodate the growing enrollment. But then we also have to deal with the elementary issues. And we've talked some about that. I'm a firm believer that we're going to
Thank you
need
very
enough
much.
school.
Thank you. We
The
appreciate
question is
your
where
comments
and
very
there.
much. Thank you. Mr. Bernard Green.
Well, folks, serving on the select board is a really, really hard job. It's not easy. It doesn't take, slogans or flip answers to difficult questions. It really takes hard work, thoughtful engagement. An example is the ninth school, where we have been looking for a site for a necessary school for the last who knows how many years. And it's difficult. And we've been very open in our process, and we've identified a number of options, and we're going through those options carefully and thoughtfully so that the end result is a ninth school that we can be proud of and that will make Brookline stand out in this country as well as this state. My leadership in 2015, as I said, I promised 4 things. I think over the last 3 years, you've seen that I've not only been a thoughtful progressive in terms of the issues that come before the board, but that because of the successes we've had on this board, I've been an effective progressive. And that's what we need.
Thank you very
on this
much, Mr.
board,
Green.
And I ask for your vote.
Your
on May 8th.
your answering the
Thank you.
questions is much appreciated. Thank you very much, sir. All right. That being said,
That's it?
I think that's
Thank
it.
you. I offered you more time.
I'm not going to ask. Okay, great. I'd like to invite the school committee candidates to come forward. We should have Barbara C. Scotto, Katie Mayer, Katie Mayer will be reading a statement, Jennifer Monopoly, thank you, good, David Perlman, Nathan Spritz, Sarah Stoutland, Jabe Swain. If you could all please join me and take seats in no particular order. Nope, not yet. We have one more. There should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There should be 2 more. Okay. If we could have enough quiet, please, you can move that discussion out into the hallway if you would. We'd like to continue with the questions for the school committee. There's some really important school committee issues as well. We have 5 candidates. I believe we should have 1 more. Barbara Scotto, Jennifer Monopoly, David Perlman. What? You're reading Barbara's? She's not coming? Okay, great. All right. So, I think we're resolved. We may not be resolved equally well for all people, but we are at least resolved. So I have a little bit of a statement to read, just so that everybody has a little bit of context for the candidates that are being presented. So, whew, and I get a bell. Okay, so there are the school committee candidates. There are 6 candidates for 3 seats. The salary is unpaid. The duties of the school committee. The school committee has the power to select and terminate the superintendent of schools, shall approve and review budgets for the public education, shall establish educational goals and policies for the schools in the district consistent with the requirements of the law and statewide goals and standards established by the Massachusetts Board of Education. School committee candidates for a 3-year term, and we're going to allow them each to introduce themselves, except for one candidate who has been formally mentioned, as aforementioned, is in Greece. Oof, lucky. So we have someone speaking and making an initial statement on her behalf, and then she'll step down and will not be answering questions along with the rest of the candidates. So we're going to begin, as usual, in order of the ballot. So that begins with Barbara Scotto. And if you have 1 minute to make an introductory statement, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Katie Marr. I'm a member of the Board of League of Women Voters, and I'll be speaking for Barbara Scotto today. My name is Barbara Scotto, and I'm sorry I'm not at this important event today. I'm the online course facilitator for a program called the Examined Life, Greek Studies in the Schools. Every year during school vacation week, we take teachers to Greece as a culmination of the course, which began in January. I'm flying home on Wednesday, which is the last day for some of the participants. I have been a Brookline school committee member for almost 9 years. Before I was on the school committee, I was a Brookline parent. My 2 children, Adam and Erica, graduated from Devotion in Brookline High School. In my career, I worked as the BEEP librarian, Brookline Early Education Program, and in the library at Driscoll, taught for 1 semester at Baker, and spent 25 years teaching grades 5 and 6 at Driscoll. The perspective I bring to the school committee is that of an experienced teacher who won the 2002 Caverly Award for Excellence in Teaching. I'm a strong supporter of both parts of the 2018 override, which will be on the ballot in the upcoming election. In many ways, my work on the school committee has been a continuation of what I did in the classroom, where my focus was on educational excellence and equity for all students. I understand the importance of establishing an environment where all children have access to high-quality education, which enables them to grow and develop to their full potential. In addition, work is currently underway that will have a great impact on our schools for many years to come. I was on the school committee when the enrollment in Brookline schools started to rise.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. Trying to do 2 things at once. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. And you may step down now. For our second 1-minute introduction, Jennifer Monopoly.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Monopoly. I'm running for school committee. I'm the parent of 2 children in the Brookline schools. I have a daughter at Lawrence and a son at Lincoln. I've also been a public school teacher for 15 years in both urban and suburban districts, where I have taught all levels of elementary education. I've had leadership roles and written curriculum in both districts I've worked in. I've served on the site council, the leadership team, as a lead teacher, and as part of the National Endowment for the Humanities Summer Institutes. We moved here for the great community, the diversity, and the great schools. Our children have long academic careers ahead of them. I'm very passionate about public education, and I'm an invested community member. I would like to be involved in the present and future of Brookline schools, and I'm a new voice for the school committee as a parent, a teacher, and a community member, and I believe that it's essential to listen to all community members' voices.
Thank you very much. David Perlman.
Good evening. I'm David Perlman. I'm also running for school committee. I am a near lifelong resident of this town. I've lived in Brookline since I was 4 years old. I'm a product of the Brookline Public Schools. I attended Pierce for preschool, Lincoln for kindergarten and first, Devotion 2nd through 8th, and I graduated to high school in 2000. Professionally, I'm a child welfare law attorney. I represent children and parents in the courtroom I am their voice to the court, and I want to be the voice for parents and children on the school committee. Right now, there is at least the perception that people in the community are not being adequately represented by their school committee members. There is a pervasive sense that their thoughts are not being respected. I want to respect the will of each and every of our school communities. I want to involve parents and teachers and students and other interested parties in each and every decision, whether it has to do with the curriculum, whether it has to do with the ninth school, whatever the matter may be. People deserve a voice.
Thank you, and thank you for watching Lee. I appreciate that very much. Nathan Spritz?
Good evening. Thank you for hosting this opportunity, and thank you everybody in person and on TV who's watching this. Civics is a very important part of our lives. Participation matters. I'm Nathan Spritz, and I've participated in the Baker School Site Council. I volunteered on the last override and the current override. Please, I'm a supporter of yes on both questions. Please vote yes on May 8th. I've been advocating for a new elementary school for years, and I'm a town meeting member. Now I'm seeking to volunteer a little bit more of my time on the school committee. I'm running because our schools are at a crucial time. We need to build a ninth elementary school. We need to improve our communities in our schools, especially as they relate to race. We should support the administration in their efforts to have diversity among our teachers, paraprofessionals, and administrators. In short, everybody who comes in contact with our students. All students should meet.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you again for watching Lee. I appreciate that very much. Sarah Elizabeth Stoutland.
So my name is Sarah Stoutland. I have 3 kids who have gone from the Brookline schools through BEEP. I'm running for the school committee because I care about kids, I care about education, and I care about Brookline. This year we have 6 candidates. Here is what I have to uniquely offer. First, if elected, I will be the only school committee member with experience at Brookline High beyond being a parent or student. I've been on the BHS School Council for 5 years working to raise awareness of mental health and wellness issues. Second, I'm a parent leader across the K-8s. I founded and ran Driscoll Science Souls to Stay for 9 years. I coordinate Brookline's Talks, a speaker series on raising resilient, courageous, and independent children. Finally, I have expertise in education systems in addressing racial and economic disparities. 15 years ago at Brookline High, I worked with a team from Harvard to assess achievement gaps there. Our team recommended forming the African American and Latina Scholars Program. This is just a taste of what I've done for the Brookline schools. I will bring this commitment and knowledge to school committee. I look forward to answering your questions tonight.
Thank you very much. Mr. James Swaim.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, my name is Jim Swaim. I am running for this esteemed office largely because I spent 28 years teaching 3rd and 4th grade at the devotion school. Then I went on under the suggestion of Jim Walsh to be the principal at the Lawrence School. I have 2 daughters. They both graduated. One was in SWS. So when I was hired in 1977, Bob Sperber was the superintendent. And at that time, Brookline was really known for its innovative, engaging, and really groundbreaking curriculum. Teachers were encouraged to develop curriculum and to become leaders. There was a slight pipeline to administration, which was highly sought after by the staff. I wanted to help create the same conditions in our schools. So
thank you very much.
I hope to say more about that.
And you will have many an opportunity. I've got quite a number of questions. All right, so thank you very much for offering your introductions. The League has a question, and we're going to simply step down the order. So the first person to answer this question will be Jennifer Monopoly. The League's question. Today, the school budget is about 60% of the town's annual operating expenses. Page 2-5 of the FY 2019 financial plan. How do you explain asking all property owners to support the public schools serving the minority, about 25% of the town households with school-aged children? Do you have any strategies for controlling the school's operating budget? And you have 1 minute to answer.
So
Her time begins now.
Okay, great. That's a really big question. I don't know I can really truly address it in 1 minute. I think that Brookline schools are an incredible value to all the members of the community. And I think that they also help our property values. People come here because of the schools. So I think that it's a value to everyone, and that we also use, and I hope that we talked a lot, we've listened to the select board about making this a place that all families can come to and be at as well, and that people can continue to live throughout their time here. I think that it would be great to utilize MSBA funding to cut down on some of the costs of our schools. I think that it's going to be a really tough thing. It's hard to speak on because I haven't been part of the school committee and part of the decision-making process. And so I think it would be great to have a strategic plan looking ahead so that people can see what's coming and understand what we're going to need going forward to address our enrollment needs and our operations needs.
Thank you very much. Ooh, just exactly a minute. So that'd be David Perlman next.
It's difficult to answer this question in part because a lot of the ways in which we could address these budgetary concerns are beyond the purview of the school committee. However, I would hope that the select board and town meeting would explore mechanisms by which we can increase the likelihood that our residents can stay in the homes that they've lived in for many years and that is sensitive to the needs of the 75% plus who do not have children in our schools. I think one concrete possibility for that could be exploring a home rule petition. Another possibility would be raising the residential exemption. I think that, as Jennifer was alluding to earlier, we really need to maximize all the MSBA funds that we can get. We should be applying for MSBA on every single school project every single year. It's inexcusable that that has not been taking place. 2016 and 2017 went by without any MSBA applications. We really need to be maximizing all potential revenue potential revenue sources.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perlman. Nathan Spritz.
Okay, so I think this question goes more to operating than to capital. And if you take a look at the override this time, the first question, most of the school budget increase actually comes from increases due to collective bargaining, which I support. I like our teachers, but steps, lanes, and COLAs. And this is really a little bit on the unsustainable side. We know that as our teachers progress in their careers, that we're going to see year after year increases that outstrip our 2.5% property tax increases. But one thing that we can do is we can treat our operations responsibly. We can review all the programs that we currently offer in our elementary schools and in our high schools, and we can see which ones we might be able to trim or cut if they're no longer effective. We owe it to everybody to do a full review of all of our school programs right now. Thank you. So you didn't have to put up the sign.
Racing lead, that's the new game. Sarah Stoutland.
So once again, the question was about operating budgets, and I think I just want to remind people that we have gained 1,700 students in the past 15 years. 29% of our students. We're a public education school. We're a public education system. We have to take every student who lives in the town. That being said, so it's not that the school is asking for more in the sense of more per child. We just have more children. That being said, I agree with Nathan that we do need to treat our operations responsibly. We need to do full reviews of all of our programs. And I think as a school committee, at times we may need to make the hard decisions to cut some programs. And I think based on full evaluation and careful thought, that's something that with the full committee I would be prepared to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. James Swaim.
I think the fiscal responsibility has to be spread out. When I was principal, the process we went through with the superintendent to determine what the budget would be was based on need. And right now, as you know, the overcrowding is critical. We need more teachers. We need more classrooms. That will expand curriculum. But I have to say that in my years in Brookline, I think we've been incredibly responsible. and really tried to look at whether the programs we use are effective with kids, and we need to get the feedback from teachers on that. And it does need to be a collaborative kind of process, but I've admired our responsibility. So, thank you.
And thank you. Nathan Spritz?
You already answered.
Oh.
Believe me, this
No,
question
no,
could
that's
take
okay.
more than
No,
1
no.
minute. We could have a second.
No, sorry, that's okay. Thank you.
Excited to answer it again.
There's a lot of cross currents here. Okay, so we're beginning again then with the next question, and that will begin with David Perlman. So, there seems to be a perception that some of the candidates are closely associated with the teachers' union, and we're wondering if you could address the general issue.
Receiving an endorsement from an organization does not necessarily make you beholden to that organization. Speaking for myself, I appreciate being endorsed by the teachers union, and the reason for that is because we share some common core values about respecting our teachers, about making sure that our school environment is such that it's going to benefit our students as well. If you have unhappy teachers, you're going to have unhappy students. They're in the same environment. So I don't see any conflicts there with being endorsed. Doesn't mean I'm going to always agree with the union. I'm going to act what I think is in the best interest of our students ultimately, but where the values coincide, I think it makes sense and it's not a problem whatsoever.
Nathan Spence.
So I think that unions have a really strong place in the political history of our country, in the democratic process, and I support the BEU taking a position on candidates. I think that one thing should be clear, that every candidate that you see in front of you, plus Barbara Scotto, who's a wonderful teacher herself, loves our teachers, and we all support our teachers. I think the question with the union is more whether or not we're working as slates, one against each other, or we're acting independently as candidates, trying to all engage in an ongoing democratic conversation to figure out who should best lead the school committee in the coming years. And I kind of think that maybe slates aren't the world's best thing for Brookline. That's up to you, up to everybody here to decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Spritz. Sarah Stadland.
So, as everyone here on this panel, I too am a supporter of unions. I also think that there's a place for the school committee and the unions for a certain amount of separation. They're both bargaining. They sit across from each other on the bargaining table, and sometimes it's good to have interests split apart. My concern, once again, with Nathan, my concern with the endorsement of the BEU is it feels as if, to me, that the BEU, as well as the state union, is playing a larger role than it really should in the local issues at Brookline. That this is really about Brookline and our kids, and I feel that there is more, perhaps not as a parent, but it certainly feels that way as a candidate going through the interviews, that my voice really wasn't listened to in the interviews and that the decision had already been made. And that makes me afraid because I believe in Brookline, I believe in self-rule in Brookline, and I really
Thank you very
want us
much.
to make
We
those
appreciate
decisions.
your comments. Thank you. James Swaim.
So I'm running on my own merits. I will say to you, I was a teacher for most of my life. I found my experiences in Brookline to be incredibly stimulating, and I grew as a professional. But in no way would I let my upbringing influence how I negotiated, if I was on the negotiating team, which I probably would recuse myself from that. So in no way would I influence members of the school committee to do anything that would be conflict of interest in negotiations. So we are running as a slate, but we're also running as individuals. So I would ask you to consider me as an individual.
Thank you. Jennifer Monopoly.
I am very happy to have parents and teachers and community members as supporters and endorsers. I'm very happy to have teachers and parents and community members as supporters and endorsers of my candidacy for school committee. Among the BU, I've also been endorsed by Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity and Brookline PACs and Brookline Parents Organization. So I welcome all of those voices because it's my goal to represent the community, and those are all parts of the community. I also think it's part of a philosophy of education that my goal on school committee is to include the voices of all of those people, students, teachers, parents, and community members, to listen to their voices instead of listening only to top-down mandates, to have a comprehensive curriculum instead of teaching to the test, to develop well-rounded citizens that engage in problem-solving and critical thinking and project-based learning and innovative teaching. And it's not just about, speaking specifically, like Jim mentioned, I'm an individual candidate as well as members, and I endorse other candidates as well.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Next question, and this one begins with nation spirits. Please be explicit as explicit as you can about the educational gains to be had by reducing assessment. Assessment.
By reducing or
By reducing, okay.
By reducing assessment.
All right. So testing does take up time, and certainly if we did less testing, we might be able to educate our kids a little bit more. However, during my time on the Biker Psych Council, we discussed how teachers could engage in early intervention when the BAS, a basic literacy assessment given twice annually, would show that children were failing to read at grade level or were failing to progress. As I've talked with parents during the election process, I've also been told about some children who were discovered through taking the MCAS year after year that they were not progressing in mathematics. Our kids are smart. Our parents are motivated, and we can get kids extra help. But these assessments help us to identify early interventions to make sure the kids don't fall behind. Testing provides actionable data, hard numbers that can give early warnings when kids start to struggle. On the other hand, when we group children into demographic categories, we can see achievement gaps that would otherwise be hidden. That's why major civil rights groups like the National Urban League, the NAACP, the National Council of La Raza were among a dozen groups that signed a letter in 2015.
Thank you. Sarah Stitland.
I basically disagree with the statement, education gains can be made by reducing assessments, because in a classroom, you should be assessing every day. That's what assessment means. It doesn't just mean a standardized test. It means that you're thinking about what your student is learning and how they are, what your student is and what they've gained. And so there are lots of things you do. You assess every day informally. You assess with the BAS, the baseline assessment that you do. And and it varies where you do the assessment. You can also, we get education gains by doing a test like the MCAS, not for the individual, but we gain it at the district or state level. It helps us know where our populations aren't doing well. If we didn't have the MCAS, we wouldn't know about the achievement gap in Brookline. It had been ignored. I was working here 20 years ago, just as it was starting. They were working on it. We've been working on it a lot. It's a hard problem. But we gain education. We learn through assessments. That's how teachers help kids learn.
James Swain.
The MCAS is not what is called a formative assessment. It does not help a teacher adjust his teaching so that he meets the needs of kids that are in need of more exposure to certain skills. And when I say formative assessment, the most effective ones are developed by teachers. So in Brookline, we do have a math assessment that teachers have developed that help them change their instruction so that kids improve. And the problem with the MCAS is you get the results in a summative manner. They're of no help to you at all. And I might say that to ask a teacher whether there's a racial achievement gap is, it's not stating the obvious, but every teacher doesn't need the MCAS to know that. So,
Thank you. Jennifer Monopoly.
I agree that assessment can be a useful tool. High-stakes testing is not necessarily is not closing the achievement gap. I think that we need to close the achievement gap by closing the opportunity and access gap. We need to support innovation in teaching to close that opportunity gap, things like the calculus project and tutoring programs. All students benefit from curriculum that engages them in problem solving and critical thinking, not just rote practice. And we need to look at our time allotments because we are inadvertently teaching to the test and creating test takers instead of problem solvers and leaders of the future.
Thank you. David Perlman.
If you want to know how a student is doing, just ask the teacher. That's what we should really be getting back to. The over-reliance on standardized testing and on these more formalized assessments has a ripple effect in a variety of ways. First of all, it does have a profound impact on time allotments. Our children have less recess time. That increases their stress levels. Our children also spend, in grades K through 5, 40% of their classroom time on English literacy, English specifically. Literacy is very important, but there are other means to improve one's literacy skills. Social studies would be a vehicle toward that. Science would be a vehicle toward that. The reason that doesn't take place today is because of this over-reliance on testing. Teachers, or some of them at least, on a subconscious level, feel pressure to teach on subjects that will definitely appear on the MCAS exam. And that's something that we really need to be mindful of.
Thank you very much. And for our next question, we are going to begin with Sarah Stoutland. Brookline High School has already removed 25 tons of food waste from the trash stream in this school year. How would you help in expanding this program to all the schools?
Well, I actually attended the Finance Committee where this was discussed, and so I think one of the things that I think would be a great idea if we need to work with the food service, obviously, but introducing a compost program to all 8 schools seems to me to be a good idea. It's a great way to educate kids about food waste, and I think it's a matter of working with principals, teachers, and the food service staff to figure out a way to do it and make it make sense.
Thank you. James Swain.
Reducing waste in the schools could be a service learning project for kids. I think one of the issues that we have is that kids have virtually no autonomy in terms of the curriculum. It's more a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. And I would predict that kids could be very excited if we gave them some responsibility for this kind of enterprise. And it would have a trickle effect, I think, and spread to other areas of the community. And I would really be more than willing to involve everybody. And I'd be in the cafeteria helping out. That'd be a great sort of image of a school committee member.
Jennifer Monopoly.
I really like the idea of composting. I think there's some discussion about having compostable silverware in the schools. I think that getting kids involved in these kinds of persuasive arguments and community action is really important. This brings up other topics on the environment and the impact that schools have on the environment. So I think there's a lot to discuss here.
Thank you. David Perlman.
I would certainly agree that it's important for our children to be engaged in proper waste management and learning about it, and more broadly, participating in pro-environment initiatives. I also think that the school committee and our town more broadly is in a position to help in that effort. As we look toward expanding our classroom capacity, we should try to do so abiding by net zero energy principles. We should also be pursuing green repair MSBA funds, which is a separate category. Newton has done an excellent job of taking advantage of that opportunity. So I think we need to look at environmental issues at a more holistic town-wide level, especially with our schools.
Thank you. Nathan Spritz.
So I think that I can echo everybody else's comments here, that composting sort of makes sense. I think as a community, a progressive community like Brookline, it makes sense anyway. We have composting over at the teen center. There's no reason why we can't have composting everywhere. But one of the nice things that we could possibly do is take some of our BHS students that are involved in the food waste reduction effort there and let them be student leaders in our elementary school system and in our ninth school when we build it. Because it just makes sense to allow students not only to learn, but to also learn how to lead. And I guess the other obvious thing is, let's make the food taste better, and maybe there'll be less waste.
Thank you. And on to the next question, and we will begin with Jim Swaim. What are the plans for increasing the amount of time for recess, especially for younger students?
What are the,
Plans to increase recess time.
so I don't know if you are aware, there was some controversy over at the Runkle School about eliminating morning second grade recess. So I'm very aware of how important it's billed as child-directed activities. It's a time when kids can play and interact. It teaches socio-emotional skills. It lets them burn off energy. And we really need to be very aware of how much physical exercise our kids get. It should be balanced. There actually should be, for every hour of instruction, there should be 15 minutes of brain break time. And that is would be on a choice basis, but I'm a really firm believer in making sure that we balance instruction with.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. It's much appreciated. Jennifer Monopoly.
So it's my understanding that there will be some more protected recess time starting with the next school year. I am a huge advocate of protected recess time. It's so important for students to have that physical and mental break from academics. They come back so much more engaged and attentive. It's just so important. I can't say enough.
Very good, but you have. David Perlman.
Recess is extremely important because our children do need breaks during the day. They need to be able to focus, and they're not going to focus well if they're getting restless and they don't have that time to decompress. I do understand that there are certain time pressures, and there's only so much time to go around in the day. But there are other mechanisms beyond recess that could enable our children to be physically active. I recall when I was a student in the Brookline schools, we did a lot of acting in class. So, for example, when we would read books, we would actually perform them. We would do skits. And even that type of getting up off your seat and moving around, and that helps. So any type of physical activity that we can integrate into our curriculum, I think is quite beneficial. And that's why I'm a strong proponent of a comprehensive curriculum with a lot of interdisciplinary components to it.
Thank you. Nathan Spritz.
Recess is an important component to any kid's life. I think that most of us who are or were parents recognize that our kids do better after they can get some outside time. I don't think there's no controversy here. Our days are short at Brookline. We do have to squeeze in a lot of curriculum. As a community, we can have a discussion for how and when and where we want recess to take place. I prefer outdoor recess. That's my preference, because when I was a kid, we got to go outside for our recess. But to the extent that that is not possible, we should schedule some sort of internal brain break. I kind of like that term. Other than that, we're going to be looking at lengthening days so that we can schedule more recess, and I think that's probably not a conversation we're ready to have. Thank you.
Sarah Stoutland.
So I'm just going to echo the recess. I believe right now 30 minutes is the minimum recess that, at least that's what Andrew Bott had said. 30 minutes of recess is now the minimum. And I do want to say, people have been talking a lot about recess, and for all kids, recess is not a fun time if it's not well supervised. And I think one of the things I like about Driscoll is that the teachers go to recess, and they talk about, and I know they've done some training on teachers being in to deal with conflicts as kids come up, and that recess can be both a child-directed time, but it can also be, it needs also to be a time that's supervised by adults when you're putting that many kids on a playground, and it can be a time of learning. It can also be a time of bullying. And I think that it's really important that we have well-supervised recess with people who are well-trained in teaching the kids how to cooperate. And that's been my experience in the Brookline schools. My experience has also been that my kids do brain breaks. In my experience with my kids, I think we do, at least at Driscoll, we do recess well.
Thank you very much. All right, with our next question, we'll begin again with Jennifer Monopoly. What is your position on school enrollment? Do you support a ninth school, and if so, where? Do you support expand in place, and if so, at which schools? And I'm happy to reread the question if you'd like.
I think we'll just go with ninth school, and we'll talk about that.
Well, if they want sort of a compare and contrast with the ninth school and expand in place. Again, as some specificity, please.
So we're really talking about our enrollment needs in a broad sense. And so I am not coming with a specific loop. So I think that there are some very, very good potential possibilities of communities that are interested in doing some expansion in place. Some schools that need some rehab and some work anyways, and if those communities are amenable to those, I fully support that. I think there are several schools that are interested in doing that in the communities. Part of my goal in running for school committee is to be responsive and listening to the community, and I think that's important. And I think that even more than a location, it's about the transparency of process for figuring out where our ninth school may go. For specificity, I think there's some expansion in place possibilities at Pierce and Driscoll, and I think that we could also look at possibilities of a small new build for a ninth school. I think it's really important to focus on the process for how we get there and how decisions are being made. There are a lot of things that have been sort of floated out there, and I think a lot of community members are wondering about that.
Thank you very much. We have, Barbara Scotto wrote some answers to some specific questions, and we have a statement that Katie has offered to read. Show of hands, shall we allow the statement? Yeah. All right. You're on, Katie. Please take your seat. And Katie, if you would simply stay there. Katie does have statements in a number of areas. I don't believe the league has a specific rule on this, so I think we'll allow Katie to speak. And when she has an answer, she'll let me know, and we'll call on her in her order. And if it's okay with the group, we're going to slot her in here and then see how it goes.
Okay. Rising school enrollment can be managed by increasing class size, by making schools function year-round, by extending the school day, by expanding an existing school or building a new school. We repeatedly reject increasing class size because each child gets less attention, often affecting achievement and causing stress to teachers and students. Extending the school day or running year-round schools requires extra staffing and causes additional wear on the buildings, increasing overall costs. In year-round schools, where each grade has school vacations at different times, regular family schedules are disrupted and childcare difficult to find. Expanding existing buildings or building a new school is expensive, but in the long run is the best solution. If you plan carefully, it will hopefully solve overcrowding problems well into the future.
Thank you. David Perlman.
I've been a town meeting member for 4 years and quite involved in this process, and in my capacity as a town meeting member and as well as a candidate for school committee, I've attended multiple listening sessions at our various schools. And the Pierce community made it very clear that they would like something done there. And I believe that we should respect the will of each of our neighborhood communities. So if Pierce wants something done, we should do it. Pierce is long overdue for a renovation, and we could do a renovation as well as a slight expansion. What I envision would be a renovation and a one-section expansion at Pierce, a one-section expansion at Driscoll, as well as construction of a smaller ninth school of about 2 sections. That would open up some smaller parcels that would potentially be less divisive. I think we would have less neighborhood resistance if we were looking to build only a two-section school. That would also enable us to address both the enrollment projected growths for North Brookline and South Brookline. If we only go with the ninth school alone, we're not resolving the entirety of the problem. So we really do need a multi-site approach.
Thank you. Nathan Spritz.
So fiscal responsibility really sort of dictates the answer to this question. Before I go into where the ninth school should be or what the ninth school should be, we do have to renovate Pierce and Driscoll. That's mandated. It's part of our renovation plans, and it has to be done. Now, just dealing with the ninth school versus expanding in place. Expansion in place adds maybe a section at a school, but then it sets up wrong sizes for the common areas. So if the common areas are wrong sized, they have to be expanded. That gets to be very expensive. So maybe adding some extra classrooms, the building costs themselves are fairly small, but then when you have to add all this common area, then things get to be rather big in a few different places. Adding a ninth school can add 35 classrooms, or 36 classrooms, 4 sections in one place, much more fiscally responsibly, maybe for less money than it would cost to do that many sections at 4 different schools. Doing expand in place at 2 schools doesn't solve the problem. We would still have to do a third project. We're looking at numbers that have to be getting close to or over $300 million. It doesn't work.
Thank you. Sarah Stoutland.
So I have 3 children. I have a 8th grader and a 12th grader and one in college. The one in college just missed the overexpanding. My 8th grader's been in an overcrowded classroom since she was in kindergarten. She's now in 8th grade. She will be in an overcrowded classroom all of her career. I feel your frustration and your pain at this process. I think that I've done through the experience, I think it's been a transparent process. I think it's been a very frustrating process, and people often say it's not transparent because they don't like the results. The problem is nobody's going to like all the results. There's no way we can please everybody. So at this point, and once again, often things change all of a sudden because we don't know, things come up we don't know about, but at this point we need to do both. We need to build a ninth school somewhere in South Brookline, and we definitely have Pierce to renovate, and we've got Driscoll to renovate, and we're going to probably do some expansion at those schools. Exactly what it looks like we don't know, but we've got to do both, and yeah, I'm done. Not an either or.
Wonderful. Thank you. James Swain.
So to say something positive about overcrowding, I owe my career in Brookline to overcrowding. I was hired in 1977 to help the 4th grade teachers with their oversized classrooms. So I was given a cubicle to teach science and social studies in, which was a hardship to begin with. But anyway, I totally agree with my colleagues here that we need to renovate Driscoll and Pierce. Pierce, if you are ever in that building during a transition, it is a terrifying experience. And then we have to find a site for the ninth school, and I think we have given the public quite a bit of access. We need to continue to give them access to us, and we need to be approachable and listen well. But it's going to take some sacrifice. It just is, and we need to prepare the citizenry for that. So,
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to begin a new question, and this will begin with David Perlman. This is a similar question, but it's reaching out a little bit further, looking out over 5 years and perhaps even longer. And is there anticipation about how we're going to cope with this, not only just over this next year or 2 or 3, but over 5 years and longer? What kinds of overrides are we seeing in the future? What kind of impact are we expecting there'll be on the town and taxes?
I think we really need to put together a comprehensive long-term plan that addresses every project that we anticipate needing, and then present that to the public in a transparent way. I think we also need to apply consistently for MSBA funds, try to maximize every potential revenue source. If we do that, then some of the timing would be dictated by which of the MSBA applications get approved, but ultimately we would want all these projects to be completed. In the meantime, we would continue to use some of our swing spaces at the old Lincoln School, possibly at Webster Street, if we can refurbish it a bit more and deal with some elevator issues there. I think we really do need to look at this comprehensively, more globally. We can't be doing just piecemeal one project at a time. The voters are going to resist future overrides if we keep coming back for more and more. So it is certainly important that we have that long-term plan in place.
Thank you very much. Nathan Spritz.
I mean, this is a big problem. We have about 7,500 kids in the schools today. That's projected with new growth of some 40B projects to grow to about 8,300 kids sometime in the next 6 or 7 years. We have to build a new school. We have to do Driscoll and Pierce, both with MSBA funding, I agree. We also have to, I mean, this is sort of a select board question as well. We have to look for other revenue sources. So, I mean, right now during town meeting, we're going to be looking at some, I can't believe I'm going to say this at a school committee event, we're going to be looking at marijuana. And marijuana could be a major source of new revenue for our town. But it's part of the facts. But we're going to have 35 new classrooms or so. We've got to put teachers in those classrooms. Doing the long-term plan, that's something I'm good at. I'm an actuary. But it's a lot of work. The nice thing about this, though, is that it's really understandable. It can be spreadsheeted. It can be discussed very clearly with the public. You can plot very nice trends so that we can see what's coming. On the revenue side, we need more commercial development. That's the only thing that I can say. Thanks.
Thank you. Sarah Stoutland.
Well, I do think that it is what I really want to say is, well, I really want to have Nathan on the school committee because I'm really looking forward to the fact that he understands all these issues. And so he will be helping lay out a long-term plan for us because I think that is what we need. I think also it's about preparing people to realize that when the kids come, we have to take them. And so it's about preparing people for what's going to be happening in the future, as much as we can predict the future.
Very good. James Swain.
I think we have to prove that we have a long-term plan in place that we can create, and this agony will not last forever. Because right now there's this perception that we're reacting to problems as they occur. And I know that's probably not the case. I think there are some very wise people here in town government, and we need to rely on them, but I do think we need to have a sequential plan on this. I spent 3 years as a principal in Newton, and I'll be honest, when I got to Newton, I was appalled at the condition of their schools, but they had a long-range plan and an order of construction, and they had sought state funds, state help, and that really worked. So I'm not saying Newton's better than us.
On that note, Jennifer Manelli.
Yes, I agree. I really like the idea of a long-term strategic plan that lays out what our investments are going to be and renovating, new space, enrollment growth, a long-term plan so that we can see where we're going. And looking for other alternative revenue sources as well. But great schools help to make a great Brookline.
Thank you. Next question, we begin with Nathan Spritz. So I'm going to begin with the last question, which is, do we know how many school children are allowed to attend Brookline schools because their parents are staff in the public school system? And should we continue this practice of allowing out-of-town children to attend Brookline school systems? And that's the question.
So I think that this question goes to materials fees students. So In Brookline, we currently have about 200 materials fee students. We have about 300 Metco students. Combined, these two groups cost the town about $5.5 million a year. And quite frankly, if I look myself in the mirror and I want to say, do I support our teachers? Do I want to continue to attract and retain the best teachers, the same way that we've been doing this for many, many years? I can't afford to give up on the materials fee students. And you know something? I think that's a really good investment for us to make. The same thing is true on the Metco side. In Metco, Brookline was one of the 7 original communities that helped to support the creation of this program. We invite 300 kids a year into our Metco program. The total cost is well within our hearts to provide for this community. So I think that this question is easy.
Sarah Stoutland.
So I agree with Nathan. I just want to add when you have staff who have kids in the school, it means they understand the whole school system, and I think that's really important. They don't just understand 4th grade, they understand K through 12, and that makes a huge difference. In terms of Metco, this is what our Brookline residents learn. They learn what it means to go to school with people who are different from them, going to school with people who live farther away. I think that it benefits all of our students and is certainly worth keeping.
Thank you. James Swaim.
So I moved here with my wife. We were in JP. We expected that our daughters would be able to go to school here. I think it is an indispensable right of teachers to be able to send their kids to the Brookline schools. As far as Metco is concerned, I can't think of a richer program for kids. And I was very thankful that I could teach with both those groups.
Thank you. Jennifer Monopoly.
I think that we hear a lot of the same voices up here with the same ideas. Both programs are invaluable, and I think that educators bringing their children to school adds value, like Sarah said, to their understanding of the complete curriculum. It's also a benefit for them and a draw for them for wanting to come and work here in Brookline, to attract and retain highly qualified, excellent teachers. The Metco program is an incredible program for students coming here, but also for the students that are here. And so there is a value add that you can't put a dollar sign on.
David Perlman.
On this point, I think we're all in agreement. Metco is an extremely important program. Brookline was one of the first to get involved with the Metco program. Metco adds tremendous diversity to our schools. It benefits both the Metco students as well as the students who live in Brookline. We learn from one another. It's important to be in an environment where you have people of multiple backgrounds. It prepares you for life. It really enriches your quality of life as well. As to materials fee students, I completely support having them remain a part of our school system. It helps attract teachers to Brookline, and it's an important benefit to offer them because many of our teachers, or at least some of them, cannot really afford to live in this town, in part because expenses are rising, and we want to be able to attract top teachers here, so it's a good benefit to provide.
Very good. Thank you very much. With that said, we're on to the next question. And this one we begin with Sarah Stoutland. Much knowledge and hard-won experience is lost when veteran teachers retire. How might you rescue this loss?
Well, when we first got to Brookline, I believe that we often would. I know they had the practice of hiring back retired teachers for I think part-time work. I know that my daughter was taught some math by one of the retired teachers. So I do think that we need to have a way to encourage teachers who've done a lot and have a lot of knowledge to come back and do mentoring of other teachers. I think that that makes a lot of sense.
Very good. Thank you. James Swaim.
Right now, in our schools, we really don't have a structure that creates a true learning community. And by that I mean we need to give our beginning and early teachers an opportunity to view veteran teachers in action. And that means observation, that means visiting classrooms. We need to somehow structure a process where the wisdom of our veteran teachers can be passed on. Right now, we're still in this sort of egg crate mentality, although the learning communities are fairly big right now in the educational world. I think we need to go much farther and sort of learn from our veterans before they leave us, because there's not that much of an opportunity for that to happen right now.
Jennifer Monopoly.
I think that veteran teachers are such an important part of a balance in a school, because new teachers and young teachers, teachers in the first 5 years, really look to veteran teachers to provide leadership for them and to help them grow as educators. So I would like to think about how we can keep our veteran teachers from retiring when they do, and what might be happening in our Brookline schools that might be causing people to want to retire earlier and earlier. I think that there's some top-down mandates and a lot of data-driven instruction assessment that's happening to cause some people to retire.
David Perlman.
We have a significant problem with retaining top teachers, veteran teachers, and especially principals. With the exception of Baker, no principal at any of our schools has been on the job for more than 2 years, and that creates quite a few problems. We need to do a much better job of having an internal pipeline to help develop teachers and administrators to become principals. When I attended devotion, Mr. Kaplan was the principal my entire time there. Mr. Dempsey was the vice principal my entire time there. After I left and I was at the high school, at some point Mr. Dempsey became principal. That was a very logical flow to having stability of leadership. Clearly there is a problem taking place when we have this type of turnover. I think part of it might be on the hiring side. Maybe we're not always choosing the right people, and we should involve the community more fully to make sure that we're choosing people who reflect our values and whose intentions are to stay here for the long term. And then the other issue might be that when we do identify qualified individuals for principal, they don't always have the adequate supports in place to thrive in that environment. So it's very important that we provide mentoring to our newer principals, that at minimum, if it's not someone with direct experience at that school, that they will be paired with someone who has been at that school for many years so that we can have smooth transitions.
Nathan Spritz.
So I'm a parent of two kids at Baker, and I really like the fact that our principal's been there for so many years. Mary Brown, if you're watching this, hi. But I have to say that the best years that my kids have had at Baker are the years when the teaching, the teachers at the same grade level all work in teams. They all share what they learn. The older teachers sometimes learn from the younger. The younger teachers almost always learn from the older. And there's so little loss of culture if a teacher is ready to leave. There's a lot of sadness because our kids, my kids, have loved their teachers. My son Zeke got a chance to give it. Actually, both of them, Zeke and I, both got a chance to give the toast for one of their teachers when she retired at the end of 5th grade. And that was, I mean, I got to be there. It was, I mean, it's one of those things that only happens in Brookline. Let's try to keep it that way. But I think that maybe more team teaching might be an approach so that we don't lose not only the experience, but the culture that comes along with these wonderful teachers that have been with us for so long.
Thank you. All right, that completes our questions, and now we move on to the 1-minute ending comments, and we begin with you, Mr. Swaim.
So I've really enjoyed this process, and I want to thank you for your really good questions. I've dedicated my life to Brookline. As I said before, it was an incredibly stimulating experience for me. I felt that I grew as a teacher and actually became the best teacher I thought I could possibly be. And that was because of certain conditions. And one of which was I could learn from the veteran teachers. I was given some autonomy. I could plan my curriculum. I had control over the time in my classroom. And so I want to bring those kind of conditions to the Brookline Public Schools. It's happening in pockets, but I think it has to happen more, and teachers have to feel like it's happening. Because right now, they don't feel like they have enough decision-making stake. So please elect me.
Sarah Elizabeth Stoutland.
So, what I'm going to bring to school committee is commitment, experience, and knowledge, and an eagerness to gain more of all three. Commitment. For about the last, although I've been involved with the Brookline schools for 20 years, for about the last 5 years, I've spent 20 hours a week committed volunteering in Brookline schools, doing everything at Driscoll and at BHS. It's something that I do. I'm committed to it. The school committee is going to be a whole new level. It's going to be lots of fun learning about lots of things. That's what I do. Knowledge. I have a PhD in anthropology. I've spent the last 30 years working on education issues. I've worked at Harvard School of Government with people there to learn school policy issues. And to close, I want to share two mantras that I've picked up on my 19-year journey with the Brookline schools. First, assume good intent. Even when others appear crazy or evil, always assume good intent. And second, and by far the most important, never forget, the kids are counting on all of us. All the kids are counting on all of us. And we do this, and I do this.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Nathan Spritz.
As this election season is coming to a close, I'm really looking forward, I hope, to rolling up my sleeves and getting to some work. We've talked about building a ninth school, renovating Driscoll and Pierce. We've talked about improving our communities as they relate to race. We've talked about closing achievement gaps, easier said than done, lots of work to do. We have to remain vigilant. And we've talked about, well, we haven't talked about ending disparity in discipline practices, but that is something I'm going to do. But the other part of school committee is running a finance committee. And I'm an actuary. I'm used to doing short-term budgeting and long-term plans. We have an enrollment growth curve that we haven't quite gotten right yet. And there's some variance around how that curve is going to turn out. It's really important to protect, to treat our town with fiscal responsibility, to really analyze the enrollment growth curves with a great deal of competence, and to competently extend those curves into what the long-term operating expenses are going to look like, and translate them into what the short-term and long-term capital costs have to be. We've got to build the right size schools in the right places and fill those classrooms with the right teachers.
Thank you very much.
So thank you very much. Please vote for me.
Appreciate it.
And I wish I had the last word, which I do, but thank you.
David Perlman.
I find it somewhat disappointing that we never got a question tonight directly addressing diversity and structural racism. As a child welfare law attorney, I deal with that quite often. The vast majority of my clients are indigent racial minorities. I see the struggles they go through. I see that their voices are not often represented in important places. That's been one of the motivating factors for my candidacy. I want to give a voice to people, to underrepresented individuals, as well as to everyone. As a town meeting member, I try to be extremely responsive to the concerns of every community. When I was talking earlier about the ninth school siting and how I attended the various listening sessions, my reason for doing that was I wanted to get a pulse of what the community wants. If I'm elected on the school committee, that's exactly what I'll do. I'll continue to be responsive. I'll continue to try to reflect the will of each community. I don't want to impose anything that is going to disturb any particular school committee. I want to be even-handed and equitable about it. Equity is a very important value that we at least say we have in Brookline. I really do mean it. I am very committed to this town. I've lived here since I was 4 years old. I attended the schools K through 12.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Jennifer Monopoly.
Thank you all for staying and listening. I'm very excited about the potential of being on the school committee. I want to be part of bringing new voices to the school committee. I think it's important to listen to the community on issues concerning our buildings, our enrollment growth, but also what's happening inside our buildings and dealing with principal turnover and policy and curriculum and recess. And in transparency and process and a focus on teaching the whole child, including science and humanities and the arts, and a comprehensive curriculum with innovation, creating well-rounded citizens and fostering a love of learning. I want us to quickly, sustainably, and equitably address the enrollment issues that we have, work on racial justice and equity in our schools and our town. I am Jennifer Monopoly, and I am asking for your vote, but I'm also asking for your voice.
Thank you all very much. If we could have the candidates for library trustee come forward. Katie, please take a seat for Carol Axelrod, Vivian Goldman, Regina Healy, Carol Lowe, Koinia Gibbons. Please take your seats at the front of the room.
Yeah. If you're not nice to me, I won't show you my picture of my granddaughter.
You know what my granddog did to me?
You are. Regina. I'm honored to I'm Carol Lowe. Carol Lowe.
And I'm Vivian Goldman. Vivian Goldman. That's me. And Koinia is here. Yeah, Koinia. There she is.
Oh, there she is.
And Michael, it has been a few years. How are you? Nice to see you as well. I think I saw Bambi here. Was it Bambi? Yeah, I thought so. Thanks, Michael.
Don't worry about it. I think we're going to get elected anyway. No kidding.
Yes.
Oh, shit. Out with your badge. You have to
I don't have it with me.
You get out.
I don't have my
You
badge.
actually always get out. You can't get in. Yes. When our meetings have gone beyond.
Oh, shit. Do I have to go? I don't have my badge with me.
Why don't you get your car and put it over now? Also, there are no spaces in the Oh, now there are. Oh, maybe. Oh, that's right. You too. Oh, my God.
Should I round this out? Karen, I don't have my badge with me.
That's okay.
I thought so too.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go.
Thank you. We're trying.
One of the questions, or is it?
How about the telescopes?
And the vinyl CDs.
It's a little out here if I ask that question. It's tempting.
That's right.
But I would use it as a
I've been
speed.
admiring your glasses from out the audience. They are great. They're wonderful. Yeah.
I mean, I would start here, and then maybe you could read a little bit of this.
take how much time.
As you go through it.
If I could have the room quiet down a little bit, I would appreciate that, so we can hear from the library trustee candidates.
She's a better candidate than me.
It's broken down all in a day's work.
Reggie.
I just had a gauge. Oh my God. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you.
Oh, Mama.
That's beautiful. Just last week he asked me. Congratulations. Thank you.
We appear to be missing one library trustee candidate. Okay.
Engagement ring and wedding band. Isn't that with the star sapphire? So I just melted. Do you have other rings? I can't, but right now it's like I don't want to wear any other ring but these.
Thank you very much, and please continue to enjoy your conversations. If you would, there's a little entryway out there, and maybe some still refreshments left. Please continue to enjoy your conversations, but please continue to enjoy your conversations outside the room, please.
See, mine's written on my boarding pass.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the candidates night. I'm going to read just a very short bit about the library trustee candidates. There are candidates for a 3-year term, 4 of whom are present. There is a candidate for a 1-year term, and one of our candidates, and that math doesn't work, it's what's in front of me, but that math doesn't work. Carol Axelrod, who's a current incumbent, is out of town, and Katie Mayer is kindly going to read a statement for Carol. And then we have Vivian Goldman, who's an incumbent, Reggie Healy, who's also an incumbent, Carol Lowy, who's an incumbent, and Coenia Givens, who is running for a new 1-year term unopposed. So we're going to invite you each to make an opening statement in the order that you will be presented on the ballot. And Katie, that would put you first, speaking for Carol Axelrod.
Hi again. So yes, I'll be speaking for Carol Axelrod. I am an almost 40-year Brookline resident and property owner. My 2 children went through the public schools in Brookline. I have been a Brookline Public Library trustee since 2000 and a chair for 4 of those years. I have been a town meeting member for 11 years, a board member of Steps to Success since 2010. I am a social worker, psychotherapist, and career consultant at Rassi Associates Copley Square since 1990. Currently, I am working to flip the house to blue in November. When first elected trustee in 2000, I mourned the loss of the card catalog and worried about the specter of electronic books. Since then, I, along with many others, have adapted to the ways the library and the rest of the world has evolved technologically, primarily for the good. I see that ebooks serve a wonderful purpose and that thankfully no technology for reading will ever replace the book itself. Meanwhile, public schools and public libraries, as guardians of civilization for all comers, ceaselessly lead and respond to advances in access to information, literacy, and communication. It is our job as trustees of the Public Library of Brookline to maintain an agile balance among this myriad of evolving roles and methods, and to wisely steward our institution, one that is both ancient and modern, into the future. As a member of the library's long-range planning committee, I stand firmly and delightedly by our mission. The Public Library of Brookline promotes discovery, connection, and opportunity for all residents. Through our diverse resources and innovative programs, we aim to enrich the lives of our citizens through free access to information and in many different media and formats. We are a cultural destination and a site for learning and recreation, as well as a place where people come together to exchange ideas. We strive to be both a cornerstone of our community and a gateway to explorations of a wider world.
Thank you very much. Vivian Goldman.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I've been on the board since 2003. And my first year as a trustee, I initiated and managed Picturing Brookline, a program, I don't know if any of you remember that. It was a town-wide program for picturing our town. And it was terrific. Everybody loved it, and they keep asking me to do it again, and I have smiled at them sweetly and said, well, maybe in the future. I've also was involved with something called Digital Commonwealth. If you don't know about that, look it up on the web. It's called digitalcommonwealth.org. And it takes all of our materials, our archival materials like pictures and so on, and puts them on the web. And Brookline has got a big presence on that. It's really an exciting thing to do. Currently, there are two big projects that are happening that you may know about. The one is the expansion and renovation of the Coolidge Corner Library. And with this last conversation with the school committee, you can do a lot on the space that you have, the footprint that you have. And it's been really remarkable. Sarah, who's our new director, she has done incredibly
Thank you very much. Reggie Healy.
Hi, I've been a trustee, I think, for 12 years, and I'm a lawyer, and I have children and grandchildren who have all gone to the Brookline schools, and one of my sons still lives here, and his children go to the Brookline schools and do very well there. I'm a library trustee partly because I really cherish books, and I cherish information, I cherish literature. But I think that when I thought about the importance of the library, I'm reminded of a statement that I went to BU, and President Case was the president in the millions of years ago that I was there. And he used to call the urban university the citadel of democracy. And I think he was wrong. I think the library is the citadel of democracy because we serve absolutely everybody, age, religion, race, people who read, people who use electronic devices. It's a very essential element of any community. I'm vice chair. I love it. I hope you'll elect me.
Carol Lowy.
In my 6 years as a member of the board, I think that the most important thing that I have learned is just what Reggie said, that maybe even more than our schools, libraries are democratizing institutions. We welcome all ages, genders, races and ethnicities, and economic levels. And our job as trustees is to make sure that we are encouraging the programs and facilities that you all want. Your job is to let us know what we're doing well and what we can do more of. One thing that hasn't yet come up, in addition to the Coolidge Corner improvement situation, which is going to be great, is that as a member, as is Reg, of the Brookline Reads Committee, we are at the end of Glorious Month on Wednesday. Pulitzer Prize winner Colson Whitehead will be at the high school as the last event in Brookline Reads. We hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Queenia Givens.
Hi, thank you. So I am the newest member of the Board of Library Trustees. I have now been serving since February. We had a resignation on our board in town, and I applied and was elected to serve in this position until this next election. And I'm running unopposed, but I hope you still all turn out and vote enthusiastically for me. I am very passionate about libraries, and this has been such a great fit for me. I'm a lawyer by training in my profession, and I'm also a mom. And my, I would say, love affair with libraries began as a new mom in a new town and trying to find my bearings there. And I found the library to be an essential, critical space. Libraries are more relevant than ever. Our librarians are our curators of our culture and curators of our technology. And in a town where we have a 13% poverty rate, a growing senior population, growing families, our libraries are essential community spaces, and I want to be a part of our Brookline libraries continuing to lead. We were the first library in the nation with a children's reference room, and I think we will continue to lead in the rest of this next century. Thank you for voting for me.
So there aren't questions from the audience. So we would normally move to closing statements, and I'm going to go in the reverse order in which we gave our opening statements, and I'm going to offer you the opportunity to add anything for up to another minute. So Koinia Givens, that would make you first.
Well, thank you so much. I would just invite anyone and everyone who would have a question for me, an interest, or an idea or way that you would like to see us engage or continue to engage with the community, with partners, to please feel free to reach out to me. That has been one of the wonderful things I've gotten in my short time of serving on the board. I'm really enthusiastic about looking forward to our program Wednesday night. If you haven't already registered, I would encourage you to come. Our last few programs have been standing room only. And thank you for voting for me.
Carol Lowy.
Thanks. As the treasurer of the library board, one of my jobs is to make sure our budgeting is transparent, but also that we get a lot of bang for our buck. But another thing that I feel is not only my job as treasurer, but as all of our jobs, is to make sure that in order to do what we want to do and what you want us to do, we get our fair allocation of town resources. So wearing another hat, I would urge you all to vote yes for the override, and then help all of us lobby those who divvy out the cash to make sure that the library also is treated well in the budgeting process that will follow the hopefully successful override. Thank you.
Reggie Healy.
Well, I think I agree with everyone, and that's unfortunate, really, because I have no bombshell to say to you, except I really want you to use the library. And actually, I'm just going to promote reading, because it's fun, it's good for you, and come visit us. We'll be there.
Very good. Vivian Goldman.
Sure. I would just like to say that I was once upon a time a librarian in my life. So libraries are terribly important to me. They always have been. And the important thing for me as a librarian and now as a library trustee is providing access. To me, that's the center of a library. And we do, this board has always been an activist board. So in whatever we do, however we do it with our committees and so on, that's the primary thing that we always do, is to try to provide access. So I'm looking forward to another 3 years on the committee. Thank you.
And thank you very much, all of you, for coming and for spending your time so well on the library, and it's all much appreciated.
Oh, thank you. Oh.
We have a library question.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so we're going to start this question with Vivian Goldman. What will the Coolidge Corner Library users do while the space is being renovated?
At Coolidge Corner? Is that the question?
Yes.
Oh, we're going to go over to the Sussman House across the street from the library. We did this a number of years ago, and also at Putterham, where we took the major collections that we thought people would need and brought them over across the street to the Sussman House. So you're going to have as full a set of services as you could possibly want. Sorry?
Pull your mic closer. Just pull it closer.
The library will have temporary space at the Sussman House across the street from the library, where you'll be able to request books and return books and make and get some reference questions answered there. So it's not just going to shut down.
Very good. Regina Healy, excuse me, Reggie Healy, would you like to answer this question as well?
I don't know what I can add except to say that the Brookline Village Library next door is not too far, and we have longer hours in either of the two branches, so come use it. We can get books transferred from either of the two other libraries. And we'll get it over with as soon as we can, and you will be delighted. We will have an elevator, we will have windows that don't rattle, we will have better lighting. You'll be surprised.
Carol Lowy.
One thing that I can add, in addition to what you've just heard, is that to answer all the questions about what's going to be new and exciting at Coolidge, as well as how those of you who are dependent on that library will have access to services in the meantime, we're conducting a series of tours of Coolidge, and I think the tours are April 28th and 29th, is that correct? And then there are going to be two informational meetings, one in the daytime and one in the evening, and I won't give you the dates because I don't have them on the top of my head, but ask you to look at the library website, and you will have not only a sneak preview about what is going to change and how excited you're going to be, but also how our services will be available to you in the interim.
So, and that was what I was going to add, those things for the tour.
If you remember them, say them, because I don't.
But maybe one final thing I would just add is, if you have not already signed up for our newsletter, you really should. I really would encourage you to sign up for that. There's just a wealth of information about things like these tour dates that are coming up, things about programming and events, and also just the happenings. I think we're going to be posting pictures and different milestones of progress. I mean, to put you on the spot. And then you find other little neat things. Like, did you know you can come to the library now and check out a record player and actual vinyl records? They are available for you to check out. You can come to the library and check out games to play with your family and take them home. And so anyway, sign up for that newsletter and you won't be left out of any news. You'll be kept in the loop.
Thank you. Okay, we actually have two more questions. We're going to begin this time with Reggie Healy for the next question, also Coolidge Corner related. And apparently Coolidge Corner has summer Sunday hours, and with its temporary closure, will another branch have Sunday hours?
Yes. You know, I didn't actually expect this question, and we just voted on this. As you know, the library next door is open on summer Sundays. And there are going to be some summer Sundays also at Putterham. I can't tell you exactly what they are, but we did attempt to accommodate the missing Sundays that we're going to lose at Coolidge.
Very, very good. Carol, do you have anything to add?
The only thing that I'd add is that we are using the situation of Coolidge not being available for some months while we're painting and putting in new skylights and pointing and new windows and all that good stuff, to not only adjust hours at other branches so that people are served with in as many hours as we can possibly do it, but we're also using this opportunity to try to figure out where and when our needs are greatest, and are hopefully going to, down the line, be able to not only adjust, but possibly even, if the override passes, and adjust our hours for openings of the different branches. There's nothing set in stone. This is a kind of dry run to see where you all want to come when.
Coenia.
Let me see here what I might be able to add here. I might say, when I said earlier, I think because I tend to smile a lot, people may think maybe I'm being slogany when I say this, but Brookline really is a leader in our Commonwealth amongst libraries. For example, I believe it's our Putterham branch is in the top 3 routinely in the amount of circulation we have. And so when we mention things like override, nobody wants to talk about things growing more expensive, but it takes these extra dollars to keep up with the demand. And I've been really pleased, as I've been new to the board, to learn about how far our phenomenal library staff is making that dollar stretch, talking about doing a lot with the resources that we have. And so I really would encourage you, invite you again to access the website or ask any questions that you may have so that you can be pleased with how far, in fact, your dollar is stretching, and to also to keep showing up for these votes and for these critical budget items so that we can continue to be a leader in our Commonwealth and have the library and services that we all continue to enjoy.
Vivian.
I just want to add one thing to what's already been said. Putterham, I don't know if any of you here live in Sobro, as we're known. Since it's outside of good transportation, the South Brookline Neighborhood Association people who live over there really don't have very expanded hours for the library, and the group has gotten together and has come to us and said, what can we do about that? So that's an ongoing, we have formed a subgroup, and we're working on it, and as Carol said, that this closing of Coolidge Corner now is helping us to see how we can actually expand hours and services over at the Putterham Library. So stay tuned for that. I live over there, so I'm really hoping that this is really going to work out for us.
Great, okay. And I have more questions, so we're going to continue. And this time we'll begin with Carol Lowy. And here's the question. As a mom of small children, I'd like to see more space and programs for young children. The open playtimes at Coolidge Corner are great, and similar things at other locations would be wonderful too. What ideas do you have? Carol?
Well, I can say your wish is my command. Coolidge, first of all, one of the things that's going to happen in the Coolidge Library is that the space is going to be expanded, the bathrooms are going to be improved, and for those of you who are perhaps not a parent of a small child but like to sit in the relative quiet of Coolidge, we're also improving the soundproofing there tremendously so that everybody can be served if you're this high or if you're this high. So there is one thing that we are doing to improve the services to both our children and our older users. We are hopeful, and I keep stressing the override, but we are hopeful to be adding a children's librarian in the main branch, I think. Is that where it's going to be?
Yeah.
So that there will be somebody to expand the programming. And I'm also happy to say that the foundation, which is our funding arm, has recently allocated their funds to more children's programming system-wide. So, as I say, stay tuned, and your wish is our command.
Very good. Coenia Givens.
Thank you. I would encourage you to keep letting your voices be heard. To speak even more about this, our expanding staff, it's because we've had lots of use of our libraries by young children. And so to meet those needs, we can't just group our children all in one bunch and have one person to serve them and think we're going to still lead in the nation. We now have broken those down into tweens and young children's groups and older groups. And if you've even visited the main branch, you'll see how the floor space has even been designed to accommodate the different developmental ages of our children. And so certainly enjoy and take advantage of your local neighborhood branch, but I would advise you or recommend that you maybe venture out and visit the other library spaces to maybe take advantage of the children's programming there too.
Vivian Golden.
Sorry. One of the things I've just learned actually is that programming at the Putterham Branch Library has exploded. So I would really encourage you to look in our newsletter and also on the web to see what kinds of programs the new library director there, Batya Blumenfeld, I think is her last name, right? What she has done for that library is really quite incredible, and I'm sure that a lot of the programs that she has brought, that she's bringing to that branch, are children's programs.
It's hard to add anything to all the wonderful things people that have said about what the library can do for you, but I was thinking about what you can do for the library. And we welcome participation. We have a group called Friends of the Library that works very hard soliciting books and selling them. You doubtlessly have seen the sales area we don't call it the main library anymore, we call it Brookline Village. So if you want to help us, not only will you help by voting for the override, which affects us, but primarily affects schools, I admit. You can help us by being part of Friends of the Library. You can find other things that you can help us with. Give us advice. What do you want? There's always an opportunity to tell us what we're doing wrong, what you'd like to help us do right. In fact, the programming committee that meets constantly, I have to stop, but I'm going to stop.
No, you
Can
really...
I finish the sentence? No?
No.
All right, well, that's all right.
Because if you did, I'd have to talk over you.
Yeah, that's all right.
That gets tiresome. Okay, one more question, and we're going to begin with Coenia Givens. Can you address what you think is the optimal relationship between schools and public libraries?
Wow, that's an interesting question. The optimal relationship. Well, I'm not sure of how best to answer, but I think that is an important working relationship. And I would imagine most others on the board would agree with me when it comes to the budget. You know, schools certainly should be number one, but the libraries have to be a close second. And the reason being is that the library works so closely with the school, not only just in providing space, but for programming, but also a place for the kids to go. I don't know if you've been at the library in the after-school hour, but it's crowded with teenagers and every age in between. And so the library is a critical partner in the development and the learning that's happening. I don't know if you remember the Harry Potter Wizard Series program where the line was out the door. And so again, maybe that relationship is one of a partnership, a significant critical partnership that must be funded just as well with the school, and certainly one priority needs to be made, but it's a close second. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. Vivian Goldman.
Well, I think my first response to that is the schools and the libraries, to a great extent, we're doing the same thing. Okay, we're providing access, as I said earlier, and we're providing education. As Coenia just said, that in all of our libraries, the space for children is expanding, and it's extremely interesting to go in there in any given day and see the number of children that are in there. You know, so it's after school, and sometimes it's even during school. Kids are always in there. So I think that the relationship between schools and libraries is very closely allied with one another. And we have programs that we do together with our schools and with the library.
Thank you. Reggie Healy.
The best thing I can think of to add is that we have a nationally recognized and lauded young adult librarian who does fabulous programs for teenagers, not only having to do with books, which would be my end of it, but also doing crafts and things like that. And kids just race to the library to be part of that. So we have no shortage of teenagers in the afternoon. Fortunately, they're not there in the late hours. Stop. Okay.
That was your 30 seconds.
Oh, well, that's all right.
You have 30 more.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Thank you very much. Carol.
I think that the optimal relationship is close to what we have now, but still needs to grow. My ideal is that the schools and the library are kind of continuum, and that students who use their both grade school and then high school libraries also feel welcome and are encouraged by their librarian to come to see what the main libraries offer, and vice versa. We do programs in common. We are looking forward to seeing a lot of students from the high school at the Brookline Reads final event that you've heard about. And I think they've worked very, very well with us and we with them to encourage mutual participation in these programs. We offer a prize for the best creative writer in the high school, and I think that has become a kind of treasured award, and we as a library are constantly looking for more opportunities like that to involve our students, to get them into their own school library, and then across the street, down the street, up the street, depending on where they are, to see what resources we have. I think our mutual goal is to make a generation
Thank you very
of
much.
library users.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. So I think that's it for the library discussion, and
thank you very much.
An excellent job. And I would invite Patrick Ward, who didn't recognize me on my bicycle. Yes, it was. And Katie, if you would also come up. Katie has kindly agreed to read a statement for the Brookline Housing Authority Board candidate Susan Cohen. And Katie, if you would just come up, we'll have Patrick make his statements, and then you can read yours. But first, we're going to hear from Town Clerk Patrick J. Ward, who's the candidate for a 3-year term and is the current incumbent. You have one.
Thanks. I'd like to thank the League for providing us the opportunity as candidates to speak to the citizens of Brookline. I've been your town clerk for quite a few years, and I consider it a distinct pleasure and an honor that running unopposed, I can serve at least another term and do the very best I can. I think there's a few challenges. It's never a dull day at the town clerk's office, and there's a lot of challenges ahead of us. There's one, and they mentioned it here at the library trustees, was we're losing a polling location for about 6 or 7 months. So the dependability of accessible polling locations is a real challenge. We're moving a lot of them around this year, and also too administratively challenge. There's a move afoot, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. But to provide more access for registration for voters. But that comes with administrative costs, and it's a real challenge to handle that. And I look forward to that challenge because I think we can do a good job. We can meet the goals of the legislation without necessarily bankrupting the town.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
No questions?
No questions? All right. Thank you very much. And now, Katie Mayer is kindly going to read a statement for Susan C. Cohen, who's a candidate for a 5-year term. She's new, and she is unfortunately out of town, and she's a candidate for the Brookline Housing Authority Board.
Okay. I am running for the position of Commissioner of the Brookline Housing Authority because it provides an opportunity to apply my lifetime of experience as an attorney for public housing authorities, including the BHA, with a contribution to my home of Brookline. I have lived in Brookline for over 35 years. As a former chair and member of the Brookline Rent Control Board, I anticipated the loss of diversity and opportunity in Brookline when rent control came to an end. For those of us who care about economic, racial, and social justice, that loss of diversity is a loss for all of us who live here, and a tragic loss of opportunity to the people of lesser economic means who can no longer find a foothold in the town. At the same time, some of our most stable and deeply affordable housing, our public housing, has been starved by the state and federal governments of the traditional sources of funding that ought to be devoted to preserve this incredibly valuable asset. We need to take advantage of every opportunity to access funds to support the housing we do have, and to use our creativity to look at ways to operate the housing. The BHA and the town need to act in tandem to inject maximum public resources to leverage necessary private investment in both existing and newly developed public housing. We need to address issues of diversity of income, race, and ethnicity by developing partnerships inside and outside of Brookline. My dedication to the cause of affordable and particularly public housing has been the driving force behind my entire professional career.
Thank you very much. All right. Are there members for town meeting are there candidates for town meeting member who would like to stand and identify themselves? Okay. Anyone else in the room? Very good. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. With that, we adjourn, and thank you very much.